In the summer of 1764, a 14-year-old girl went out to tend her family's cattle in the hills of southern France, and she never came home. They found what was left of her the next morning. The animals were untouched. Whatever had killed her had not been hungry for them. Her name was Jeanne Boulet, and she was the first. Over the next 3 years, in the rugged wolf country of a province called Gévaudan, something began to hunt people, not travelers, not soldiers, peasants, children, women drawing water, shepherds in the high pastures. By the time it was over, more than 100 of them would be dead, some torn apart in the open, some beheaded so cleanly the villagers would speak of it in whispers for the rest of their lives. The King of France would send an army after it. Twice, someone would announce they had killed it. Twice, they would be wrong. And when it was finally over, and the body of the last suspected killer was hauled north to Paris in the summer heat, the flesh rotted off the bones before anyone could examine it. To this day, no one can tell you with certainty what the Beast of Gévaudan actually was. The Gévaudan was a wild place. Chestnut forests, granite ridges, tiny stone hamlets clinging to the slopes. There were wolves here, and everyone knew there were wolves. But what began in the summer of 1764 was not the work of wolves anyone had ever seen. The witnesses agreed on a few things. It was big, larger than the largest wolf. Some said the size of a young calf. Its coat was reddish, with a darker stripe running the length of its spine. Its head was massive and long-snouted, and when it charged upright, rising onto its hind legs to take its victims by the throat. It hunted in daylight, it ambushed shepherds from cover, and it beheaded them. That last detail is what turned a rural tragedy into a national horror. Wolves do not behead. They don't have the strength for it, and they don't hunt that way. Whatever the villagers were meeting on the edges of the fields, it was not the animal they knew. Word traveled. Newspapers in Paris and beyond began to publish account after account, and the Beast of Gévaudan became something the whole of Europe was reading about at breakfast. Eventually, the story reached King Louis XV, and the King of France did something remarkable. He sent an army after a monster. The first campaign was led by a dragoon captain who mustered as many as 20,000 local men in a great sweeping hunt. They found many wolves and killed them, and the attacks continued. Professional hunters came next, a father and son from Normandy with bloodhounds trained to run down anything living. They too killed wolves. They too failed. And then, in the summer of 1765, the king sent his own gun-bearer. His name was François Antoine. He was 71 years old, personally attached to the royal household, and in September of that year, he did what nobody else had. He shot an enormous grey wolf near an abbey called Chazes, nearly 6 feet long, well over 100 pounds. Survivors of earlier attacks, he wrote in his report, recognized the scars on the animal's flanks. Its body was stuffed and paraded to the court at Versailles like a trophy of war. Louis XV rewarded him with money and titles. The beast, it seemed, was dead. 2 months later, the killings started again. This time, the court in Paris did not want to know. They had celebrated. Whatever was still killing peasants in a mountain province 500 kilometers south must be something else. Another wolf. Bad luck. Not their problem. For another year and a half, Gévaudan lived with its beast a second time. There were moments of astonishing courage. A young woman named Marie-Jeanne Vallée, met by the creature on a road, drove a homemade spear into its chest and forced it to break off and flee, and was hailed for it as the Maid of Gévaudan. A boy of 12 named Jacques Portefeuille rallied a group of children with sticks and stones and beat the creature back when it fell upon them in the fields. Louis XV, hearing of it, paid for his education for the rest of his life, but children kept dying. Until, on the 19th of June 1767, at a hunt organized by a local nobleman on the slopes of Mount Mouchet, a farmer named Jean Chastel raised his rifle and fired, and the killings stopped. That was the ending. Or at least, that was where the killing ended. Because the animal Chastel shot was loaded onto a cart and driven north toward Paris. And that summer was fiercely hot. By the time the wagon reached the capital, whatever it was had rotted to bones and stinking hide. No naturalist could examine it. No expert could name the species. The Beast of Gévaudan was buried in an unmarked grave, and nobody ever conclusively said what had lain on it. That silence has never been filled. What was it? Even now, more than 250 years later, the arguments have not stopped. Some point to the simplest answer: a very large wolf or several wolves working the same territory. But too many witnesses described the same anomalies: the upright charge, the beheadings, the reddish stripe. Others argue for an exotic animal that had escaped captivity, a striped hyena brought back from North Africa as a curiosity, or one modern biologist has proposed an immature male lion. And then there is a darker theory, that some of the killings were never done by an animal at all, that a man or a family used the terror as cover. Suspicion in later centuries has fallen on the very family who ended it. Jean Chastel's son had traveled abroad. He was known to have kept unusual dogs and possibly an unusual animal. It is possible that what Jean Chastel finally shot was something he had once helped feed. Nothing has ever been proven. What is certain is this: for 3 years, in the middle of Enlightenment Europe, in the age of Voltaire and reason, something walked out of the woods and killed with a purpose no one could understand, and then vanished into the ground and left us wondering. The king had his trophy, the gun-bearer had his glory, the farmer had his shot, and Gévaudan had its dead. Somewhere on a hillside in France, the wind still moves through the grass the way it did in 1764. Stand there long enough, and you might almost hear it. Something big, moving fast, coming through the wheat. The past whispers. And here, on the edge of a French forest, the strange never quite answered.